Good afternoon, Mavericks, and thank you for tuning in to our First Generation Celebration event. Today's event marks the first of two events that the University of Texas at Arlington will be hosting this year. Today's event is titled Being First, from a first-generation student to a first-generation professional and UTA faculty member. Over the past 3 years, UTA has celebrated first-generation college students along with the rest of the nation. However, this event is the first panel discussion where we get to see what it means to be a first-generation student who is now a professional and a faculty member. My name is Jennifer Lucan Sutton. I am the director of the TRIO Student Support Services Program and the university's Title V project known as the IDEA Center. It is my honor as a first-generation student and professional to join many of our first-generation Mavericks and supporters across our campus. I am serving as a moderator for this conversation, and I will be introducing our honored speaker. We have with us Dr. Lim, who joined the University of Texas Arlington as Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs in July of 2017. He is also a professor in the Department of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering. As Provost, he has led our university's academic programs, degrees, and initiatives across our 9 colleges and schools and many other department areas. In March of 2020, Dr. Lim was appointed as UTA's administrator in charge, in addition to his role as Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic. Dr. Lim successfully navigated the university through these unprecedented transitions to online learning while maintaining academic excellence for the university's students, the safety of our campus community, and the university's trajectory towards Tier 1 status. Dr. Lim was appointed as interim president in May of 2020, and he will be joining us now.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Jennifer, for allowing me to participate in this really important meeting. It is with honor and humility that I can be a part of this celebration at this time in this manner. You'll know what I mean in a moment. You may not know this, but it is actually doubly significant for me today, 2 times. First, like many of you, I too was a first-gen student some 37 years ago. Back then, I did not even realize that this category actually exists until many years later when I became a faculty member. So looking back, I'm actually pondering, there were times I wish someone was around to show me the ropes, so to speak. Therefore, I'm actually very passionate about helping first-gen students to be able to succeed in college. The second thing, that is also significant for me is in 2 days, some of you know, November 8th is the designated day to celebrate first-generation students. This date was selected to honor the anniversary of the signing of the Higher Education Act, also known as HEA, as part of President Lyndon Johnson's War on Poverty. You know what year was that? 1965. You know why that is significant? That happens to be the year I was born. How coincident is that? So even though I came to UT Arlington, as Jennifer mentioned, in 2017, the university had been supporting first-gen low-income students for many years. This was actually strengthened when, as Provost, I established the Division of Student Success, that part of an organization that Jennifer is part of now, while I was Provost, again in 2018. As many of you know, DSS stands for Division of Student Success, plays a leading role in developing programs that ease the transition of students to the university. So such as offering assistance in obtaining financial aid, helping students to find a sense of belonging, both in the classroom and on campus, and many more. So if you're a first-gen student, so please don't forget, access the many programs offered by DSS. You know, I would be drooling. Seriously, I would be drooling if DSS existed when I was in college nearly 4 decades ago. So next Friday on November 13th, during your part 2 of this 2-part series, First Gen College Celebration on this campus, you will have the pleasure to hear from Interim Provost Pranish Aswas, He will kick off that meeting. I believe he will share statistics about our first-gen student population, and he'll share some ideas to improve first-gen student success. Of course, on top of the panelists today as well. So I hope all of you will have an excellent meeting and a time of engagement with the faculty and the staff panelists today and also next week. So do stay safe, remember, and thank you for listening. So with that, Jennifer, let me pass the meeting back to you. You are mute. That has to be the phrase of the century.
Thank you, Dr. Lim, and thank you for the wonderful words that you've shared with our UT Arlington community this morning. So students and audience members, I do have a couple of slides to share with you before we get ahead to our panelists, because I think it's great to provide a context as to why we are here today to celebrate first generation college students and what that means. So we've already heard the welcome from Dr. Lim. I'm going to talk with you a little bit about how many first generation students are at UT Arlington and what are some programs that are here to support all students of the university, but with particular training and programming available to help first generation students. And then we're going to get into the great panel that we have where they're going to offer their words of wisdom, their advice, and share their experience as they were once first generation college students who are now first generation professionals and faculty in their careers. And then last, we will have questions and answers. Please feel free to use the chat feature to post your questions. I will be monitoring them throughout the presentation and will be more than happy to share responses with our panel this morning. So first generation students at the University of Texas at Arlington. First and foremost, I have these numbers here because I want all of our first generation students, myself included, to see that I'm not the only one, and there aren't so few of us here at the university. This is a round number to give us a picture of how many students, undergraduate students, pursuing a bachelor's degree are the first ones in our families. As you can see, there are over 10,000 students, and it is likely that there are even more. The reason why we know this number is because when we applied to the University of Texas at Arlington, there was a box that allowed us to select first generation college students. There are many of us, however, that did not select that box, but we are first in our family to pursue college. And so this number is an estimate of how many students at the university presently this fall semester are first in their family to attend UT Arlington and attend college. So if we want to break that down to a percentage, a little over 40% of our undergraduate students identify as first in their families. So here's something that is interesting for those of you in the audience. You know what your major is. You know what college you are connected to. Take a look and see how many other hundreds, and in many cases, over 1,000 students are also first in their families to be attending college. It was important for me to include this information for students to see, because as a student in your shoes 20 years ago at the University of Texas at Arlington, this would have helped me see that I was not the only one, that I didn't have to pretend that I knew what was going on, that I didn't have to pretend that I knew how to act in college, how to adapt to college. And those were kind of scary moments for me. So this is here meant to show you that there are many others like you here, and there are services and supporters that are here to help champion your efforts as you pursue your education. Some of those efforts are in the form of programming. So as Dr. Lim mentioned, the Division of Student Success, there's an arm of it called Retention and Completion Programs. We have the Academic Success Center that offers supplemental instruction, various forms of tutoring, peer mentorship, and academic coaching, as well as peer-led team learning. These supports and these services are here for all UT Arlington students, but particularly as a first-generation college student, these services are here so you do not have to feel like you have to walk the path of college alone. There are different ways to engage with these services and to learn and to maximize your learning and to even possibly even pursue employment with them. There are different times of the year where they would love to have applicants who are first in their families to apply for positions, because then you know firsthand what type of support and message you would like to provide to a student in order for them to be successful. Here's just a little picture of how many first-generation students reached out to these various services just last academic year. So in the 2019-2020 academic year, even with the pandemic affecting our services, we still were able to serve a large number of students, students who identified as first generation. And so again, if you pursue these services as a first generation or continuing student, there is many others like you who are also seeking these same services. And so now we are getting ready to transition into our panel. I will now allow or call on our panelists to introduce themselves briefly and to share their name, what their role is at the university, and how long they have been at the at UTA. You will get to see them face to face as we turn on their cameras.
Good afternoon, Mavericks. I'm James Coomb. I'm the Executive Director for Military and Veteran Services here at UTA. I've been on campus for, well, going on 3.5 years now and been working in higher education for 12.
Marcella?
Oh, sorry. Hi, my name is Marcela Nava. I'm an associate professor in practice at the School of Social Work, and this is my 7th year at UTA.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Minerva Cordero. I'm a professor of mathematics here at UT Arlington, and I joined UT Arlington in 2001. I'm sure some of you in our audience were born after I joined UT Arlington. For the last 7 years, I am serving as Senior Associate Dean in the College of Science. I'm delighted to be here spending this time with you this afternoon.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Richard Rawley. I am the current director for the Upper Bound Math and Science Center, a TRIO program here on campus. I've been here over 16.5 years, began as a learning specialist and now director.
Thank you to our panelists for your warm introduction and having our students understand the different areas where they might encounter you should they find you on campus. So we're going to kick off with talking about our experiences in college as first generation students, and then we'll progress into the career and professoriate. So I would like to ask each of our panelists to share their favorite college memory. So let's start with James.
All right, well, thank you, Jennifer. So I had a very non-traditional route into college. I had joined the military right out of high school, and then through some just luck with some people talking, well, through my chain of command talking with some high school teachers I had in high school, I found myself in college at the exact same time that I was serving on active duty. So they would allow me to go to my classes, and then I would have to report back to Fort Carson to conduct my workday. So, but my favorite memory is I remember I had gotten off of active duty, I had left and joined the National Guard. Well, I had the GI Bill, but I didn't really realize what college had cost. This was the very beginning of my sophomore year. I had also kind of experienced some newfound freedom, not having to report to military duty all the time now. So my grades started slipping as well. So my financial aid went away because, well, I went on academic probation, money wasn't coming in. It was a really tough time. So I went into our certifying officials office, and that's the person that processes our GI Bill money. And her name was Meg Brewer. And I said, Meg, I'm thinking I'm going to have to drop out and go get a job and do these things because I just can't afford to continue being here. And she's like, well, you got your tuition paid for. And I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't cover housing. So she just looked at me point blank without questioning anything. And she's like, hey, do you want a job? And I said, yes, I would love to take a job. I'll do whatever you need me to do. I'll mop the floors if that's what's going to keep me here. And she was like, no, we'll have you process and certify benefits in our benefits certification office. And we'll get you kind of some experience with financial aid and admissions and some of those areas. And the reason that's my favorite memory was because this was somebody that really didn't have to take the time to get to know me. She didn't have to understand who I was as a person or even care what I was going through. But she did. She took that time, and over the next 2 years, she really, like, she became my mentor on the campus and somebody that I could go to for anything. And to this day, I still drop an email to Meg every now and then just saying, hey, how's the family? Here's what I'm doing now. But what that opportunity gave me is it got me involved in higher education behind the scenes, in admissions, financial aid, the records office. And it gave me a passion that I could do more and I could help students not experience the same issues that I was experiencing. So it launched my career without me even knowing it. I went in just saying, hey, I don't have the money, I need to drop out. And next thing I know, I had a career in higher education.
Wow, thank you, James. And as we move on to Marcela, I know a little bit of Marcela's life from outside, from what she shared as being a professional that's been able to collaborate with her. Marcela, in your talking about your favorite college memory, could you please share a little bit about your history and the pride that you have from where you come from and where your family comes from?
Sure. I'm happy to share. So my favorite, so I guess just for context, I was first generation of my family to go to college, but I come from a family of immigrants. My dad's from Mexico. My mom was born in Honduras. And so I was a first generation born in the US. And so I went, my undergraduate, so my favorite memories for my undergrad, I went to Texas Christian University, and I grew up in Fort Worth, about 10 minutes down the street from TCU, literally on the other side of the railroad tracks that separated the neighborhoods there. And so I worked full-time, worked about at least 2 different jobs while I was in school. And so my freshman year, I rarely spent any time on campus. I was either in class or I was working. And by the time I got out of work at 11 p.m., the main kind of food, again, we called it the main, food establishment was closed. And so most of my meals ended up being on the road. So Jack in the Box and I, the crew there, and I got to know each other very well, or thankfully at my parents' house, since I had parents that lived down the street. So at the end of the school year, I had so much money left over on my meal plan, and there was just no practical way to eat it all. I was inviting friends, hey, let me come treat you to a free meal. I couldn't use it up, and I had a good $300 left in a meal plan. And this is, back in 2003. So my then 10-year-old sister and my 8-year-old brother, I basically told them, hey, I'm going to bring y'all to campus. And there was kind of we called it Frog Bites. It was like a little mini 7-Eleven. And that was actually open, later hours. So I basically walked them in and I said, I need y'all to grab $300 worth of stuff in here because I need to use up this money on this meal plan or it's going to go away. So my 10-year-old brother and my 8-year-old sister and I walked out with like 8 bags of every kind of soda and soft drink and candy and just random thing. And to this day, they always say, like, do you remember that time we brought all of that stuff home? And that's just become one of our favorite memories. Of course, that was one of the first few times that they were exposed to a college campus and a college setting. And so that was a really exciting time for me to get them excited and to kind of normalize the college experience for them.
Thank you, Marcela. I appreciate that. Minerva, if you could please share your favorite college memory as a student.
Well, actually, more than a memory, I guess it's the most vivid memory that I have when I started college. I grew up in Puerto Rico in the countryside in a very, very rural area, really quite impoverished area. And we have our school, which was what would be considered Title I, where everyone had free lunch. And for me, the first time that I ever stepped foot at a campus of a university is when I went to enroll at the University of Puerto Rico at the community college in my hometown. So I remember going to this place and just being in awe about how vast it seemed. It was like this beautiful, wonderful building with amazing facilities and equipment, very, very different than the little schools that I had attended before. My parents not only did not graduate from college, they did not even finish elementary school. So they did not really understand what college is about and how much you should prepare your children before they start in that journey. I mean, to the point of, I just applied to the community college in my hometown, and the first day I went there was when I went to register for my classes. And I so clearly remember that first day.
That's amazing. Thank you, Minerva. I remember adapting from the applying over the phone. UT Arlington students used to have us register by the phone with a 5-digit code. And then we went into online registration, and I lived through that transition. And so it was quite something to learn as a first-gen student without any support to help you. But thank you, Minerva, for bringing that up, because it reminded me of my own experience at UT Arlington in the late 90s, early turn of the century. So thank you. And Richard, if you'll please share with us, what's a favorite college memory you have?
Sure, no problem. And I didn't know, Marcella, you also, I am also a TCU graduate as well. And mine also relates to Dr. Cordero, her memory. Me being a student from Mississippi, I came from a small town in Mississippi called West Point. And I grew up on a farm where there's chicken, pigs, and we had our own garden. We even had our own water pump where we pumped the water from out of the ground and everything. But at the age of 12, I came to Texas with my mom and my other 2 brothers, and we both we had a good experience. But I realized when I started school, I had to adjust, because I look back and I can see that this coursework was a little different from what I had in elementary school in Mississippi. And then also, both of my parents did not complete college. They took a few classes, but they didn't finish, and they were basically factory workers in a processing plant. So adjusting was probably, I guess, it's a memory, because my first semester at TCU, it was eye-opening. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, we may say that, but I had to adapt. And but the good thing about it was great networking with new people of all types of people. And so that's one of the things, I'll throw this in, that diversity on campus is very important. I think it gives students a greater experience when they attend. But me being kind of more of an introvert person, it kind of forced me to get involved in campus activities. I was part of the Residence Hall Council. It made me also socialize at different events, because I didn't know anyone on the campus or when I joined. And also I had experiences becoming vice treasurer and vice president of a student organization. So it just gave me a great experience. I think that was my best memory, starting college at TCU and just kind of jumping in there. Like Dr. Cordero, I believe I went and took a test at the TCU, but other than that, I didn't really visit the campus before. So I was brand new to everything. And so that was one of my memories of transitioning from high school to college.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you very much. So I'm going to kind of move along and talk about selecting your major, and if anyone had a change of major. Some first-gen students come in and are undeclared, or actually all students come in and we may have one pathway planned out, but then we switch gears. And so if there is anyone that would like to share their story of how they either stayed on track with their major or found themselves exploring different majors, something that's important for our students to understand, that is it okay to change your major, and it is okay to rewrite your path and find your way. You know, James shared with us earlier about how one interaction of a college job led him into his career. So let's hear what you all have to say.
Yeah, I'd be happy to jump on that, Jennifer. So changing majors is normal. It really is, because especially as first generation students, we had no idea what majors were. I thought college was high school again, where they were just going to tell me what to take, and I was going to walk out with a bachelor's degree, and things were going to be good, no problems. But that wasn't. I found out very quickly it wasn't. So when I walked in and they said, "Hey, what's your major?" I kind of panicked, and I was like, "Okay, well, I'm military, so criminal, whatever you have that's close to criminal justice." So they put me in a criminology track. And I did that for the first 2 years that I was in college. And then I deployed to Iraq for 18 months. And the entire time I was over there, I did a lot of engineering and construction work. But we also did a lot of prisoner transport and law enforcement type work while we were over there as well. And I left Iraq coming back to Colorado saying, nope, I do not want to do law enforcement. I'd be like, I respect what they do, but this just isn't for me. So I went to my academic advisor, and my advisor's like, well, you're a junior by this point in time, you know, you really kind of stuck on your track. And I was like, well, what is there that else I can do? So he suggested that I move into sociology. And I really fell in love with that sociology track and learning about society and people. So no, changing majors, I think as long as you're doing it intentionally and smartly and you can make your credits work, definitely changing majors is fine.
So, so I'm happy to. So, as far as changing majors, I think I changed majors about 3 times. And you know, I echo, you know, what James said as far as it being normal. One thing that really, I guess, impacted my decision is that, again, the circumstances of me being in college is that I was at Texas Christian University, but unlike Richard, I had a great education experience there, but socially, I did not enjoy it at all. And I also had a lot of pressing financial needs. And so I was living at home after my freshman year, but just because of my home situation, I needed to be able to contribute to essentially my rent to live there. And so I had to work off campus, and working off campus put me in a tutoring job at a local high school where I went. And it kind of opened up my eyes to things around education and social services. So when I went into college, I went in as political science. And I kid you not, when my advisor asked me, why are you picking political science? I said, I want to become a lawyer because all of my high school friends went to jail or got kicked out, and I want to go help them. So I was literally the only one of my friends that graduated high school. So when I started college, I had to develop a whole new batch of friends. So I went from political science to psychology, you know, to say, let's dig to the root of the problem. And then I ended up gravitating into social work when I really found myself working in the community and finding just how unique it was that for the first time I could step foot inside a high school where a few years before I'd been a student, and all of a sudden I had something to contribute because people could look up to me and relate to me. And so that's really where my passion for social work and eventually public policy led me.
Thank you, Marcela.
It's my turn. Yes. So it's really interesting because when I was choosing a major, actually, I was not even thinking what kind of job do I want to do. And I did not even know how the two things related. So in school, I always liked mathematics. And it's like, I love mathematics. Well, I just want to go to college and learn more mathematics. And so I selected the major, the math major, not even knowing what kind of a job will I be able to have. And I was just so happy learning more math, which I know might sound weird, but I just loved it that I never thought to even change to do something different. My sister tried to convince me to do computer science, which at the time it was like a brand new area that was growing, but I kind of felt, no, I just want to learn more math. And so I stayed with the major until I was about to graduate. And one of my professors said, why don't you go to graduate school and keep learning math? And I thought, well, that's great. I'm going to keep learning more math. And so unfortunately, in order to do that and to get a graduate degree, a doctoral degree, a PhD in mathematics, I had to leave Puerto Rico. There was no university in Puerto Rico that had a PhD in mathematics. And so that meant I had to leave Puerto Rico, the only place that I knew, my family, my home in the countryside. And that was quite an interesting and challenging time for me. But the fact that I make that sacrifice to come to the States is really sort of what kept me going. So choosing my major was just my passion. I love mathematics, and I just wanted to learn more about it, even though I had no idea what kind of a job I would later have. And I am just so glad that that's the path I followed.
Thank you, Minerva. Richard, did you change your major along the path?
Yeah, I actually did, but it was at the very beginning. So initially, it's funny, Dr. Cordero mentioned computer scientist. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a computer programmer. I liked everything, computer, technology, all of that. I liked that. But then I started, I guess it was one day it kind of hit me. Do I want to be in front of a computer all day? That was my main reasoning. And so I decided to go to engineering. And mainly because of my uncle. He was an electrical engineer. I learned about what he did, and it kind of inspired me to do the same. And so I switched to engineering. Me being a person, I'm one that I will stick it out until I get it done. And so I did accomplish getting my bachelor's in engineering. And I'll tell you really quick something funny. And at the time I didn't know, but this proves that I was an engineer. So one time I built a mini house in my grandmother's yard in the front. So, I mean, I literally cut the wood and nailed things together and everything. And my grandmother came outside. She's like, "What are you doing, son?" You know, and I just built it because I wanted to build it in the yard. And so and I realized that, you know, that's what I wanted to do later on, obviously. But yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Richard. Okay, so now that we've had a chance to get to know a little bit from our panelists and where they've come from, what their first experience was like, and now that we've all at some point changed our major, how we found our path, I want to change it up a little bit and talk about challenges. As first-generation students, many of us and all students encounter challenges. Could you reflect on one of the challenges that you experienced as a student and share how did you overcome that challenge, or what was the outcome?
Yes, so I mean, I had so many challenges going through college and even just getting started as a student. And I really find myself fortunate to have gotten through school, because I really shouldn't have. And now I'm working on my doctorate and moving through, because I barely graduated from high school with my GPA was so low. And then I went into my first couple of years in higher education in my undergrad, and was like, okay, I'm doing okay. I was floating, you know, I was sitting between a 2.5 and a 3.0 GPA. And it wasn't that I couldn't do the work or that I didn't understand it. It was just that I didn't really apply myself to it. So that caused even more challenges, on top of not really having a whole lot of family support, because my parents, they were like, okay, that's cool that you're going to college and that's awesome, but they had no idea what to tell me or how to help me or where I could be supported in that. So there were those challenges. And then I had to overcome the financial challenges, because while my parents, they both worked, my dad worked for the port of entry for the state of Colorado in kind of a mid-level position. And after he got out of the military, and my mom worked odd jobs all the time around helping to take care of me and my brother. So the finances weren't really there backing me either. So I was just trying to find that balance and that sense of work. So overcoming all of those different obstacles, you know, I think led to some of my grades and some of my choices. But it took me far longer than I wish it would have. But I found that just getting connected on the college campus, learning that there's faculty and staff members, I'm not bothering them when I visit their offices or I give them a call and say, hey, I'm struggling in this area. But my first 2 years in college, I tried to stay away from faculty and staff. I thought by going to their offices was like going to the principal's office. So I was like, I am not going. I am just going to stay away. Even if I have a question, I'll figure it out. It'll be fine. Well, after I started working in the benefits office for financial aid, I said, oh, you mean they pay you all to be here to help me? So, okay. So I started going, and that's how I overcame a lot of those obstacles. Was I just started talking to staff on the campus. I showed up to events, I participated, I got involved in some clubs and activities, and it's all things that I feel like if I would have done it in my first or second year, while it all turned out okay at the end, I would have had just such a better experience.
Thank you, James. And I think a lot of us in the audience can relate a little bit to some of what you've shared. Yes, Marcela.
Sure. So, man, I feel like this could be the topic, right? The challenges that we could sit around and talk about for a few hours. So I think for me, it's easy to wrap it up as just, again, the differences between not just being first generation student, but first generation first generation born in the U.S. and to make it all even more complicated, I had the additional challenge of coming from a circle of friends that were not at all positive influences. My parents didn't speak English, and because of a lot of the cultural adjustments of growing up in the U.S. with parents who held very different values, I had a lot of problems at home. So I actually graduated high school at 16 and started college at 16 and started working full time at 16. And I decided that I had to prove something to everybody. So for me, the challenge was, walking around with this big chip on my shoulder, and feeling the need to, and I guess this kind of puts it into perspective here as well. I was a really, really bright kid in school. And so for me, going to college was more about, let me just move out of my parents' house into the dorm room. But getting there, one thing that I quickly noticed, and this was, again, going to TCU, which is not a diverse institution at all. One of the first things that I noticed is that people that look like me, people whose families come from where I come from, were flagged as the minority students or the scholarship kids or the financial aid kids. So I actually got to a point where I decided I was going to just work as much as possible and reject any type of scholarship or assistance such as Upward Bounds that could have been helpful to me, because I didn't want to get pegged in that social context. And I can, expand on that in a different conversation. But the challenge, again, was putting so much pressure on myself and not having the social support of friends who were going through it. I didn't have friends in college until I was a senior in college, because, again, it was so socially different than my background, and it was not diverse. My parents knew nothing. Again, my parents have a 6th grade education. They don't speak English. They work from home. They're fairly isolated from most of societies. So the isolation and the challenge of being able to really have people that I could talk to that understood what I was going through was definitely, kind of what made that such a challenge.
Thank you, Marcela, for sharing your story with us today. Dr. Cordero, you're on mute.
So sorry. Yes, for me, it was something similar to what Marcela mentioned, and also Jennifer at the beginning in her introduction. Is just not knowing that there are many other people in my very same situation in the campus. So I felt like, I don't know, but they all look like they come from families that know what this is about. They come from families that are better off financially than my family. So thinking that I was just the only person there that was first gen and that came from a low socioeconomic background, that was something that I really had to work hard to overcome, and then to kind of start branching out, especially when I came to the United States, and with my accent, and just feeling like everyone else was better than I was actually smarter than I was. And now I look back and it's like, actually, they were not as smart as they looked like they were, and I was as good as they were, but I did not know that at the time. And so having to deal with that, and yet I kept going, and I'm glad that I did, but just that sense of feeling that you're less than they are, because most likely they have different upbringing than the one I had.
Thank you, Minerva, for sharing that. And that is definitely something that as first-gen students, we do feel that pressure and that sense of being less than. And so I'm hoping that everybody in the audience can hear this, that you're not alone if you think that, and that maybe by uniting together with your classmates or with other faculty members that you can share, we can help relieve ourselves of that pressure. And Richard, yes, we would love to hear what you have to say.
Sure, and it kind of goes along with what everyone has said as well. For me, I felt challenged by not feeling prepared when I went, as I told you earlier. I had challenges of finances, like Jane mentioned. I had limited role models or mentors to help me on the journey. I wasn't aware of the resources. I wasn't aware that I could ask questions, reach out to people, like, similar to what James was saying. And so what I did, I tried to do it on my own. I was like, I can do it on my own. I can figure it out. Always had the gung-ho attitude. I was motivated, but at the same time, I was kind of motivated going up a big mountain, at the same time. So I had to kind of develop my confidence to ask questions. How I overcome, I had to come up the confidence to ask questions, be willing to reach out to others, to say, just something simple as a classmate, he's making an A in the class and I'm struggling with a D. Just saying, hey, can I talk to you for a few minutes and say, hey, how are you doing making an A? How are you making hundreds on the test and I'm barely making a 70? And so those types of things, as a student, don't be afraid to do that. And that's what I did. Eventually it's like, I can't do this. I got to go to someone. And then I found mentors. I found a few people that would tell you, hey, it's okay to ask questions. Professors, even some of the professors were key for me, that they would reach out and say, hey, can I advise you on some things? And so that really helped.
Thank you, Richard. And just for everyone who's listening in the audience, we have had our first question come in. So before I transition us into now being a first generation professional, I would like to address this question, and I open it to the panelists. Talks about, how did you deal with the pressure of being first generation in your family? And so again, just to let everyone know, there are articles, testimonials, and studies that talk about when you are first generation student in your family, maybe you're the eldest or the first one among your siblings to go to college, and you leave home to go to college, and then you return, things start to shift and things start to change. And so please feel free to interpret that question in the way that it can relate to you. I know I personally felt that shift in going back to South Texas from the urban city of Arlington at the time, and of war between my rural border town community that I knew my whole life and coming to an urban diverse campus. I definitely had my own set of challenges there, but we would love to hear from panelists with yourself and your experiences.
I'd love to start with that one. It's hard. I will tell you, it is incredibly hard to be the first in the family, especially since, I can't say my parents don't value education, but I don't think they understand it. I think they understand because they just never had that experience. So they went through. So I'll go home and I'll hear things that I guess I grew up with all the time. And even trying to expose my kids to it is kind of hard sometimes, because what my parents are talking about, I'm like, well, that's not correct. Where did you find that research, or where did you get that information from? And they're like, oh, I heard it at the post office down the street because it's a small town, or, we were talking and we just kind of came to that. And I'm just like, wow. So that is a lot of pressure. And then I feel like sometimes when I'm talking to my parents, or I tell them something that I've been successful in my education or in my career, I feel like they get kind of upset or standoffish because they feel like I'm talking down to them, or I'm talking like that. I feel like I'm better than they are because I have an education, which isn't the case at all. Because I'll be the first to tell you, you don't have to have a college degree to be successful. It just opens up some different doors. But it is a lot of pressure. But I would say I deal with it with just knowing what my goals are and what I want to accomplish. And when I feel like maybe some of that pressure is coming down, I try to have that real conversation with my family and say, hey, it's not that I'm disrespecting anything that you provided, because you did a great job of raising and supporting me growing up. It's that I want to provide more and better for my own children, and this is what I'm doing right now will lead to. And sometimes having that and being able to show that, it puts it in perspective, but it's just that understanding piece, and I don't think it's a pressure that ever goes away.
Thank you, James.
And I can talk about that as well. I would come from it from two angles. One is being the first of my I guess being the only one of my friends, not just to graduate high school, but to go to college, and having such a being so socially isolated from the people at college, at my undergrad, that I found myself clinging to the friends I had in high school, which was not a good influence, and they were not encouraging. And there was a really tough time where I had, those literal conversations of, oh, you think you're too good for us now because you're in college. And so I had to make some really tough decisions and reflect really, really reflect on myself and figure out how to, I guess, navigate that sense of loyalty to the people that I grew up with, to the people that I knew the challenges they had and I respected them, and yet I was choosing a different path. So I had to learn how to let some friendships go. At the same time, again, much like James, I had to learn how to navigate space within family. And so one of my dad's favorite things to say is whenever, I start talking about an academic topic is, oh, ahí está la voz de profesora, there's your professor voice, kind of as a way of saying, like, don't talk down to me. And so I actually appreciate that now, though, because what I have realized over time is that going to college, whether we admit it or not, it does socialize you. It does socialize you to not rely on what people say as much and to look into resources. It does socialize you to value different things. And oftentimes we don't catch that until we're back in our natural kind of home family setting. So I've learned to really keep my family academic lives separate, and to only highlight things to my parents without expecting them to understand. So I might say, hey, I won this award for this thing, and it is the most prestigious thing I could possibly do as a PhD student. Oh, that's great, honey. Do you want a second serving of beans? I've just had to accept, like, I just need them to be happy because I'm happy, but give up on the idea of them understanding it, because that's really not their job. You don't have to understand it. They just have to be happy for me.
Thank you, Marcela.
Oh, I love that example, Marcela, and it reminded me actually when I took the college entrance exam that I got the highest score ever at my high school, and actually still to this day. And I was so excited telling my father, and so I said the score, and he said, "Why did you miss so many points?" It's like totally not an understanding of what it is, which was the reality. Luckily for me, I come from a large family of 6 children. I'm number 4. I had sisters that were in college at the time when I started, and so we will together have this group and this in some sense support network from each other. But my parents, and at the time my father had passed away at a very young age in a car accident, and so but my mother really did not even know the difference between going to high school, going to college. She was not involved in the process of what we were doing, what we were learning. If we have a project, if we have she was not really involved in that. She valued it, and she was very excited that we were doing that. But actually, to the point, as I come from a family of a large family and 4 sisters, and we just love studying. So even during the weekends, we will be there at the kitchen table because there was no other place in the house, working and doing homework. And my mother would say, "Why can you not be like other girls in the neighborhood that go out on the weekends? You're just always here studying." So that is to show she really did not know the difference of going to college versus just going in high school, and what an effort we had to make to actually be successful as we were in college.
Thank you, Minerva.
And I'll just add a little bit on that. I think for me, my parents, they were supportive. They didn't finish college, of course, but they were supportive, but they didn't know what they were supporting. I guess everybody kind of have this same theme. I went off to college. My brother went through the Navy, and so I was the oldest, and I made that strive to go to college and finish. And my brother made a comment one day. He said, "Are you going to go to college your whole life?" And because I went on and got my PhD, to him, I was in college just forever and ever and ever. It kind of feels that way, but they were supportive. And I think we just have to, as students, we have to understand, like Marcela said, they just may not get it, but just share your accomplishments, share what you've done. And in some ways they will celebrate you and appreciate it. And when I go home, I'm back to Mississippi. They know what I've done, and they say, "Oh yeah, you're a big time person," and But I let them know, just like me, you can as well.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you everyone for that question. And again, just want to encourage our audience, if you would like to submit a question, please do. I have 2 more questions to go through, but if another one comes in, we'll be happy to entertain it. Now that everyone on our panel has gone from the transition of a first-gen college student to a graduate, and now we're in a professional field, what advice would we offer to first-generation students who are listening in on our program today?
I would say ask questions, get involved. Find not just one mentor on the campus, but find several people on the campus that you feel like you can relate to, that you know they can be professional staff members, faculty members, even other students. These are people that can help you to kind of guide you along your path. And then, because we don't have an inherent knowledge about college, being first generation, we don't know what it is. So it really is that you don't know what you don't know. So find people that are going to help you find those answers. And then just get involved. You know, it doesn't have to take a lot of your time or extra time, but find something you're passionate about outside of your major. And just go. If you want to go to that event, Waffleopolis, or the or commencement or convocation, just go, check it out, see what it's all about.
So my advice would be strategic. I feel like one of the most the best descriptions I've had from a mentor, and you know, to echo James, you know, develop those mentorships, has just been that there is a traditional pathway that we get taught in high school. You work hard, you study, you go to college, you do this. But what people never told me is that there is a completely separate path for achievement for folks that don't have the family, the relationships, the background. It is kind of a separate pathway to success. Success is not just working hard and going to school. Success is who you know. And I don't think that that is emphasized enough to us. It's not emphasized to us because we don't know what we don't know. We don't know that we don't know people that have a contact somewhere that could help us secure an internship. We don't know that we don't know a lawyer that would be the one that would advise us on what a legal career would be, or how to obtain a mortgage, or how to navigate a space. So I was never one to be involved in a lot of the social on-campus activities because my social circle was separate. But if I could go back and talk to my my younger self, I would encourage myself to view relationships with other people, other students, faculty, as a resource that matters in some cases even more than those grades. Network, but don't just network with just to network, right? Network strategically. So I actively have learned to seek out mentors that reflect my professional interests. So I have policy mentors. I have actively sought out mentors that are women, that are mothers, that are single mothers like myself. I have actively sought out mentors who are Latinas, who come from immigrant families. And so I'm very strategic. When I join social groups, I look for groups that can help me cultivate a sense of belonging and strengthen something that I want to strengthen in myself. So view relationships as a resource that is just as important as your financial aid. Relationships will get you far. Cultivate them. See yourself as worthy of, you know, going into that professor's office and saying, "Hi, I just want to introduce myself." You know, those are the skills that we just didn't grow up with. But if we are deliberate about them and we seek out mentors, such as the folks on this panel, you know, that could guide us and connect to us, I feel like that's going to set you up for success far more than a 4.0 GPA ever will.
Great. Yes, I love this question, you know, and I've been teaching now, oh my gosh, I think it's just right about 30 years. And so I've been interacting with students and I've learned a lot about what makes it for a successful student. And I think it comes down to 2 things, and one of them is hard work. And I guarantee you that everyone in this panel has been working very hard to get to where they are. I'm sure that our president, who is also first gen in his family, has worked very hard to get where he's at. So that's the first thing, is about working hard. The second one is about perseverance. Just don't give up. Just because you have a bad semester or you're having a bad classes, don't give up. Stick with it, stay with it, and you will be successful. Each and every one of you can achieve your goals can achieve your dreams and one day look back at this day and be the ones giving advice to other students, because I believe each of you can do that. One of my favorite quotes, and I'm going to give this for you, says, "Today is the first day of the rest of your lives." And it's so true. Your life starts today. So what happened before, what circumstances you come up with are not as important as what decisions you make today to be successful. So work hard, persevere, stay there, and you will succeed, just like all of these distinguished panelists here with me today have done.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, and I concur that, and I'll just add a brief thing. Surround yourself with people that will help you. So family members that are supportive, friends, your church, and my church also have mentors there that help me along the way. And look and ask questions as we've said before. And I think one key thing for me, don't feel intimidated. You can accomplish it. You can say, I am smart, I'm able to achieve it, I am able to accomplish it. Don't feel intimidated. And so that might lead you not to ask questions, not to get involved, not to just reach out. So don't let that stop you from reaching out and getting the information you need or tapping into the resources that are there to help you.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you, panelists, for your wisdom this afternoon and your advice. That is actually going to be the wrap, because we want to make sure that we're able to wrap up by 1, so our attendees are able to continue on. Just want to leave everyone with a personal anecdote as a part of our closing remarks. Is one of the quotes. Every now and then a student in the TRIO SSS program will ask me for some advice, or they'll ask me for a quote, and I just want to share this with our audience. Is that something that drives me and gives me purpose, along with our panelists and the advice that they've shared, is, to the world you may be one person, but to that one person you are the world. And so I leave you with that just as something to think about, as we are all first generation students navigating the college experience and the college success, and you're not alone, and to reach out to someone and to talk to them about how you feel and what you have going on is nothing different than experiences that college families share with their students. You're just in a different family group, and you may find a quote that speaks to you and helps guide the work that you do and the legacy that you want to leave on your mark on the world. We have amazing panelists, James, Minerva, Marcela, and Richard, who have given us their time today and shared with us their wisdom from their different walks of lives. And one day we hope to see you on a panel or sharing your words of wisdom to others, because you never know where that step may take someone in the world. So thank you all for your time. Thank you for listening in on our program today. And as a reminder, on November 13th, we do have another panel called I Am First, hearing the voices of first generation students. And so that is where we will have 4 students speaking about what their experiences have been as they've navigated UT Arlington. Some of them came as transfer students, and some started here as a first time right out of high school. And so if you would like to hear from your fellow classmates, you're more than welcome to attend that event. The event link is provided at the UTA events calendar. Thank you again, panelists, for your time. We appreciate the wealth of knowledge that you've provided us today.